Hello, this is James. We are here at the AIC Annual International Conference for the Institute for Functional Medicine. If you've been following the news, you know that personalized medicine is all the rage. You got to come and follow the crowds. Doctors are coming here by the thousands to see what the future of medicine looks like, and we're going to bring you the finest speakers and the physicians that are leading the way. Stay with us. Hello, we are back at the AIC conference of the IFM, and we're here with Dr. Mark Hyman. Last year, Doc, when you came to the Functional Forum and shared with us about the Cleveland Clinic, it was one of the most exciting moments of the year. A year later, here we are. We'd love to get an update on what's going on over there.
It's unbelievable, James. We've completely exceeded all our expectations of what was going to happen there. We didn't know if we would be welcomed or there'd be skeptics. We didn't know how fast it would grow, if there'd be patients. And what's happened is that we have 200 patients on the waiting list for new patients. We're booked into 2016. We've had to hire more doctors. We now have 6 doctors. We're hiring more nutritionists, more staff. We need a new building and a new space. And we've launched 4 research trials that are underway that are getting enrolled in patients early in the fall, and research in asthma, migraines, diabetes, and IBD. We're doing outcomes research. We're inserting medical school nutrition curriculum into the nutrition curriculum. We've been working in Washington on policy change, getting support for the Enrich Act, which is to provide funding for nutrition in medical school education. We're getting appropriations from the DoD for functional medicine, and we're also doing community-based work. We're working with churches and following community health programs there. And we're even working in philanthropy. We got the first endowed chair ever in functional medicine, the endowed chair, which I'm going to be holding as the first chair Wow. So it's going to be endowed chair at the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine, which is pretty extraordinary. Got a $2.5 million donation for that. Pure Encapsulations gave us $1 million for research and education. Awesome. We're building an extraordinary platform. And what's been even more amazing, James, is that many of the clinicians and the institute heads and the leaders at Cleveland Clinic are coming to us to say, let's work together, let's do things together. The head of urology, the #1 urology program in the world, came to meet me and said, can we create a prostate wellness and health program based on functional medicine? The breast health people did that, the people in sleep, the pediatric group, the sports health group. Everybody's coming to try to figure out how we can partner with them. Yeah. And it's stunning.
That's awesome. Was there an awkward phase in the first few weeks where people didn't really know who you were and what you're doing? And how long did it take for clinicians to feel like, wow, this is really something special?
Well, you know, what's been interesting is most integrative or alternative programs in the country have been bottom up. There've been some inspired leader who said, you know, I believe in this, I want to do this, I want to create a program with David Eisenberg at Harvard or Brian Berman at University of Maryland. They're profoundly smart, amazing leaders, Woody Merrill at Beth Israel, but they're from the bottom up. Yeah. This came from the top, from the CEO of Cleveland Clinic saying, we want to bring functional medicine into Cleveland Clinic and make it the work that is the future of what we're doing. We want to make functional medicine the medicine for addressing chronic disease and creating value-based care.
Awesome. I know Toby Cosgrove is pretty influential. Has he been talking to other organizations about the success
Absolutely.
so far?
He's brought me almost like parading me around to different organizations and groups and philanthropy groups. So he's really trying to move this forward in an aggressive way.
Awesome. How exciting is it to come here and see some of the technologies like Living Matrix and that kind of thing that are able to help us to track things at scale, track outcomes?
Yeah, well, we're in an inflection point where there's a lot of products and services that are supporting functional medicine. We've got major institutions like Cleveland Clinic supporting this. And we're going to see I think the rapid adoption of functional medicine throughout the healthcare system as we switch from volume-based care and fee-for-service to value-based care and paying for outcomes, not volume.
I know when we spoke at the beginning, you said you were going to try and use some innovation at Cleveland Clinic with groups and accountability and coaches. How's that the model working?
We have a health coach who works with us. We're starting to do shared medical appointments soon, so we're building that in. And honestly, what's happened, James, is we've grown so fast that we're just like trying to keep up and tread water. We thought we'd have more time to actually develop some of these things as we started, but the patients hit the door the first day, and we've been unable to even see all the patients who want to come see us.
That's great. Well, you've got tens of thousands of doctors watching right now. Anything that you want to tell them? Do you need to recruit more doctors at the Cleveland Clinic?
We need more doctors. We need more nutritionists. We need people to come help us build the future of healthcare and collaborate with us to build really the state-of-the-art functional medicine center in the world.
Between Cleveland Clinic and the Cavaliers, Cleveland is a hot
I know,
place right
what's
now.
happening.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, and
Thanks,
keep
James.
up the good work.
All right.
And next year, maybe
All right.
we'll talk, and there'll be even bigger things.
There'll be
on
lots
the
to
horizon.
share. Yep. All right. Thanks.
We are here at IFM with one of the new IFM collaborations. We are talking about the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy and the founder, Sandy Scheinbaum. Welcome, great to have you here.
Great to be here.
So,
Great to talk to you.
You know, we've been on the point of coaching and functional medicine coming together. Why do you think coaching is going to play such an important role in the future of functional medicine?
Well, a coach takes someone to where they want to be. And people who are just, if they are confused, they go to a physician and they're told they need to follow this plan, they need to change their diet, they need to change their life, and they're overwhelmed with how to do that. But coaches are uniquely trained to take someone to where they need to be. They partner with them. And what we have done is taken the art of coaching, which comes from positive psychology, and merge that with the fundamentals of functional medicine so that coaches will have this operating system which is exploding as the healthcare of the future. So coaches are going to be more and more valued as part of collaborative care teams in corporate wellness settings. So they will, that's a growing field, and now we're merging it with this exciting explosion of interest in functional medicine.
That's really exciting. Do you think it's going to be more efficient to train coaches and put them with doctors rather than teach doctors coaching skills?
So, well, we want to train coaches to put them with physicians, but coaches as physicians, people who are training to be physicians are trained as listeners, as healers, and so those are coaching skills. Yeah. So it's both.
Okay, great. And for those coaches out there who are watching, what benefit do they get from understanding the functional medicine framework?
They get a philosophy to operate with, because if a coach doesn't have an orientation, doesn't know how to look at the root causes of illness, then they're just going to be saying, okay, do this, don't do that, but they need to understand the whys. They need to understand the causes, and as we say in functional medicine, the causes of the causes, and that will help patients to learn how to initiate these diet and lifestyle changes as they have that framework in mind.
Absolutely. What have been some of the sort of the inspirations for this model and what you've seen out in medicine over the last few years?
So, well, the inspiration for our program comes from positive psychology. Positive psychology has been described by Carol Kaufman, who's from the Harvard Institute of Coaching, as the scientific legs upon which the field of coaching can stand. And that's my orientation. I'm a psychologist and I have extensive training in this model, and I've been using it for 35 years. And it's a model where we access somebody's core strengths and what do they need to thrive. It's not what's wrong with you, it's what's right with you. And as I trained to become a certified functional medicine practitioner, I saw how in line these two movements are, because that's what we do in functional medicine. You know, it's a positive approach to say this is where you can be. We want you to attain optimal wellness.
It's empowering, isn't it, on both sides?
Very empowering, absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the program and how coaches get involved, who's it for, and when's it going to work?
Sure. This is a 12-month online program. Okay. Students will work in cohort groups because the program is experiential. And what they will do is learn through case study, they will learn through personal exploration, and they will be taught by faculty from the Institute for Functional Medicine, as well as leaders in positive psychology and leaders in coaching. So they will come out with knowing the art of coaching and the fundamental functional medicine framework. It's starting in January. That's our first class. We have an academic board of advisors who are advising us on curriculum development. So we're pooling the functional medicine with psychology of eating and mind-body medicine principles, and again, positive psychology coaching.
That's great. And I know I've seen nurse coaches, diabetes coaches, some chiropractic coaches. What sort of coaches is this a fit for?
All of the above.
All of the above.
So we're looking at someone who has training in some capacity in the healthcare field, but not a medical doctor. Someone who may want to work as part of a collaborative care team. We're also looking at mental health professionals who may want to learn coaching skills, and we're also realizing that there are many people who just have a passion for coaching, and so those people are also eligible. We're asking that they petition for admission.
That's great. Well, if you've been following the Functional Forum for a long time, you know that the power of coaching and functional medicine coming together, we believe, is the future of medicine, and really excited to not only see this happening, but also be in the first wave of these IFM collaborations. They really have so much amazing content and such great frameworks. It's a shame that it's not out to more people, and hopefully by our working together, we'll get it out there.
That's what we want to do.
So this is Sandy. If you want to find out more about her program, you can go to functionalmedicinecoaching.com.
.org.
.org. Sorry. functionalmedicinecoaching.org, and you can find out more about the January program. Sandy, thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
And what do you think is the sort of the potential of human interaction or lack thereof to cause health issues?
Well, I think my personal concern is that we're seeing a digitalization of medicine, which is, I think, reducing sort of the sentinel aspects of healthcare, the ability for physicians to connect to patients. I'll never forget when I first took over as chief of neurology at a big inner city hospital 10 years ago, after being in private practice for many years. And the attending physician and the residents were walking around from room to room with a computer and not even walking into a patient room. All the data basically was in front of them on a laptop, and it was just an eye-opener to see how medicine had shifted from the bedside to the computer. And I think that what we're seeing, if there's a disease that we could think about that reflects a lot of the fundamental pathology of our society today, it would have to be autism. As people talk about the growing epidemic of autism, there are theories which I agree with, that autism is an evolutionary brain process in which brains are becoming more adept at an isolated experience that is less about connectivity, less about the communication between self and other, and that the experience that we're having through our technologies is all about the internal experience without the experience to community and socialization. So it's very, very scary. And I think that we need to recognize that this is happening in all of us to a certain extent. And the first way of solving a problem is identifying what the problem actually is. One of the best talks I heard at IFM was by Dr. George Slavich, who's a professor at UCLA on human social genomics. It was an extraordinary talk that deals with the physiological expression of stress. His work is essentially about how stress affects the expression of DNA, and I'm sure that you're absolutely going to be enthralled by this lecture. Take it away.
The title of the talk today is Human Social Genomics, Recent Findings and Clinical Implications, with an emphasis on the recent findings and forecasting toward implications. And this is just a real honor for me. It's the first time that I've been able to attend this meeting. I'm already looking forward to coming back next year. Applause just for that. That's pretty good. let me say my primary focus is how does stress affect health? Not just what are the effects, but how do experiences of stress get under the skin to influence biological systems that are relevant for health? Why do I care about this so passionately? Well, you may have seen this Institute of Medicine report just recently showing that life expectancy for American adults is last for males and second last to females compared to other individuals in 16 other economically comparable countries. This is really atrocious. The same findings emerge if you look at disease-related mortality. We're not first or second or third in terms of economically well-developed countries. We're second to last, and the only country that's worse than us is Denmark. We are number one in infant mortality, number one in adolescent obesity, and number one in heart disease. We're winning, guys. We're winning. We're doing it. Not only do we have high rates of disease burden mortality, but there are two things that are particularly disturbing to me. See if this disturbs you as well. First, these data, this is for the Commonwealth Fund, a great report if you haven't found it. Commonwealth Fund 2014 on their website. We have the most expensive healthcare system in the world, but also one of the least effective. You probably already have some indication of this. Our average healthcare expenditures per capita is the highest, but we are last or nearly last with respect to healthcare access, efficiency, and equity. You can see our rankings on the right there. Number 11, number 11, number 11, number 11, number 11. $8,500 per head for annual healthcare costs. We pay more and we get less. What's the second disturbing thing to me? Out of every 10 deaths in the United States today, in the world today, 7 are caused by conditions that can be prevented or minimized. Depression, Alzheimer's disease, certain types of breast cancer, obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. Now, based on this picture, you're probably thinking, got it, I'm totally with you, George. Let's reduce physical inactivity. Let's get physical activity up. Let's reduce alcohol use. Let's reduce smoking. It's a very interesting meta-analytic review of a bunch of different studies published in PLOS Medicine in 2010. They just looked at the odds ratio of all-cause chronic disease-related mortality as a function of these traditional risk factors and, in addition, high levels of social stress. Social stress compared to these traditional risk factors was a stronger predictor of chronic disease-related mortality than physical inactivity, excessive alcohol use, smoking, and a bunch of other things that I'm not showing here. Now, social environmental patterning of mortality risk is not totally new. That's not a new concept. 20 years ago, House and colleagues published a really interesting and landmark paper in Science showing that across multiple countries and cultures, mortality risk decreases as social integration increases. And this is cross-cultural, this is internationally. As best we can tell, social integration is really important for health. Social isolation and other types of social stress are really bad for health, especially for health that involves immune system activity, and I'll talk about that in a second. We have found similar effects in some of the research that we've done. This is a study of 168 women with histologically confirmed epithelial ovarian cancer. We observed them over a period of 7 years. The best predictor of longevity in this particular study, when everything shook out, social connection. After 7 years, 63% of women who are socially well connected were still alive compared to only 36% of women who are relatively socially isolated. Social stress alone, in this analysis, accounted for 27% of the variance that differed in women who lived longer with epithelial ovarian cancer versus women who died more quickly. Considered together, these findings, they point to two really interesting and important questions for us to consider as doctors, as researchers. Number one, how does social stress reach so deep inside of the body? I mean, in this case, we're talking about cancer biology, right? So it's presumably not just that social stress or social integration is just leading to negative thoughts or negative emotions. I mean, it's probably doing that. But if we see these effects in certain models, we start to wonder, well, could it be the case that social stress is actually influencing something like the tumor microenvironment or the immune system? How deep is it that social stress actually goes? How deep can we see these signals? And number two, we know that social stress is implicated not just in the experience of depressive episodes and anxiety episodes, PTSD, experiences of social stress and rejection, one of the best proximal predictors of heart attacks, epithelial ovarian cancer, I just gave you an example. So how can it be that social stress exerts such broad effects on health? Why would that be the case? Okay, so answers to these questions, we think, can be viewed through the lens of an exciting new field called human social genomics. This is a paper, this is work that's in collaboration with Steve Cole, one of my good colleagues at UCLA. Here's the general idea for human social genomics. We're all walking around the world, and we notice our moods change, we notice our thoughts change, right? Sometimes we're in a good mood and a bad mood. We can monitor those things. We have direct access to our thoughts and our moods. We don't have direct access to what's going on with our immune cells or what's going on inside our immune cells. So more so, we learned growing up that our DNA is endowed from our mother and our father, and the prevailing societal view is that we're relatively biologically stable, right? We can't access changes. We can't feel changes necessarily in our immune system, certainly not in our human genome. So because of societal influences and because we don't have access to those changes, we've come to the very reasonable assumption that we're relatively stable biological entities, socially, colloquially speaking. What's interesting about human social genomics, which started, the human part started in 2007, the animal stuff goes back a little bit further, is that recent studies have suggested that literally hundreds of genes in the human genome can change their transcriptional stance, can change their activity as a function of the different physical environments that we find ourselves in, and also the different social environments that we find ourselves in. And what's most interesting is out of the 40,000 or so transcripts that we can look at in order to look at the activity of the human genome, we don't see changes in just any random sets of genes as a function of experiences of social stress. What we've seen so far, and again, the entire field is only about 15 to 20 studies, but what we have seen so far is that social stress is particularly strongly linked to changes in the expression of genes that are involved in innate immunity, antiviral response, and et cetera. And I know you want to hear more about that, and that's what the rest of the talk is about. So we're very interested in understanding and in further documenting exactly what types of stress, what types of social stress drive this process, and how do these effects occur mechanistically. This is one study we conducted. This is with a sample of 147 adolescent girls who are at elevated risk for depression, mean age is 17. They don't have any current or lifetime history of depression, but they have elevated dysfunctional attitudes or negative beliefs about themselves and about other people. We followed them for 2.5 years. We brought them into the laboratory every 6 months. Every time we brought them into the laboratory, we diagnosed them to see what depressive symptoms they had, whether or not they met criteria for clinical depression or not. And at every 6 months, we also took a blood sample so we could use that information, do the genome-wide transcriptional profiling on them, and also use real-time PCR and some other methods to see what types of genes were upregulated versus downregulated as a function of experiencing different types of recent life events. So these are all within subjects analyses. The analyses are asking what types of genes are differentially expressed as a function of what you just experienced compared to what you're going to experience during the next session when you're brought in. What we found was we were very interested from prior data which showed that a particular class of stressful life event called targeted rejection seemed to be the strongest proximal risk factor for depression. Targeted rejection events, very simply, are experiences where somebody breaks up with you, or where you're fired at work, where there's a very clear intention to break the social bond. The risk factor for depression following those experiences is about 21.6-fold increase over baseline. Compared to other types of major life events, like losing a job but where it's company-wide layoffs, the risk factor is actually only about 2-fold increase in risk for depression. So we see almost a 20-fold increase over and above other types of life stress for these particular targeted rejection life events. So back to the point here, though. What we found was that at visits where these participants, these adolescents, experienced a recent severe life event that involved targeted rejection, they exhibited higher quantities of mRNA for NF-kappa B and inhibitor of kappa B compared to visits when no such stress occurred. Now these effects we see for both NF-kappa B on the left and inhibitor of kappa B on the right. We find them for both transcription factors, and we only find that these effects are specific to targeted rejection forms of life stress. So if you just look at any type of life stress in general, you don't see this structuring of transcription factor activity as a function of stress. It seems to be particular to interpersonal life events and to forms of social stress that involve the severing of a relational tie or some information about how intact the external social world is and how friendly that social world is. We did a replication of this study, slightly different participant sample. This is 121 children, aged 9 to 18, diagnosed with asthma in the past, no acute respiratory illness, no chronic illness other than asthma. In this study, we followed them for 2 years only, as if this is really easy to do. It's tough work to do, to have no attrition over this amount of time. Followed them for 2 years, brought them in every 6 months. We interviewed them to find out their asthma symptoms, also all of the stressful life events they experienced over the past 6 months. We also took the blood samples again at each of these time points. We looked particularly at levels of mRNA for the glucocorticoid receptor alpha and glucocorticoid receptor beta, because we think that these transcription factors regulate localized inflammation in the airway pathway, can lead to airway constriction and the exacerbation of asthma symptoms. What we found was a very interesting interaction between the experience of recent targeted rejection life events and the extent to which individuals viewed themselves as being high versus low in social status. So the first message is that individuals had lower levels of glucocorticoid receptor alpha, which downregulates inflammation in the airways, if they experienced a recent targeted rejection life event compared to if they didn't. So we see that same effect, in this case, experiencing more recent social stresses associated with less anti-inflammatory transcription factors that would then implicate less inflammatory gene expression. But who does better under those circumstances of social rejection? Is it the case that girls who are, in this case, all women, girls who are lower in social status, do they do worse when they experience social rejection? Or is it the people at the top of the social hierarchy? Well, we assess this using a ladder. It's literally a ladder on a page, and you ask people to just identify in their social network where do they stand on the ladder compared to other individuals in the social network. If you do that in this analysis, what we found was that actually individuals who rated themselves as being highest in social status had the greatest reductions in anti-inflammatory transcription factors when they experienced targeted rejection. So it could have been, so what we're saying here is that those, at least in adolescence, the high status people had the furthest to fall. Interim summary. Social adversity, we know, very strong independent risk factor for a lot of different diseases, all-cause mortality, specifically mortality related to inflammatory conditions. Social adversity, we think, may exert these effects by skewing the activity of the leukocyte basal transcriptome toward a more pro-inflammatory, quote, threat preparedness state, and away from an anti-inflammatory state. And we see evidence of these effects for broad categories of social stress, such as socioeconomic status and social isolation, and for specific types of stressors, such as targeted rejection life events. Now, you might say, okay, that's fine, George. Most of those studies are all correlational. I mean, you know, there's lots of things that could be contributing to the gene expression findings. Do we have any experimental evidence that social stress really influences the activity of the immune system or the genome? So to examine whether these regions might also be implicated in experiencing social pain and perhaps in regulating inflammatory response, we brought a set of about 30 of these participants who did that public speaking test back into the laboratory, and we had them do something in the scanner. They showed up with 2 other individuals. We laid them down on the scanner. We told them that the other individuals were going to 2 other adjacent fMRI scanners. We gave them a button box that they put on their right hand. These were all right-handed because it's fMRI and we need to be consistent with that. And we told them every time you receive a ball, you can throw the ball to either of the other 2 participants, Jennifer or April. And the participant is at the bottom. So everything is great, right? You're playing this ball tossing game, life is wonderful, you know, your parents love you, everything is good. But what happens is that when you're laying dark in the scanner with nobody around you, but you think you're playing this ball tossing game with 2 other people, halfway through the game, all of a sudden, you stop getting the ball, leading to an experience of social isolation and rejection. Can you imagine yourself in a scanner thinking that you're playing this ball tossing game with 2 other people? Okay, what do we find? We find that this brief experience, this is only a 2-minute experience of social isolation and rejection, reliably engages parts of the brain that are involved in experiencing physical pain. The dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula, which I'm not showing here. But believe me, it also lights up. And if you look at the extent to which individuals show this neural response in these brain regions, and use that neural data to predict the inflammatory responding to the public speaking task, what you see is that the more neurally sensitive you are to social evaluation and rejection, the stronger inflammatory response you have to the public speaking task. Okay, so we didn't focus on gene expression there, but we focused on cytokines. So presumably, we would see those same effects represented at the level of gene expression as well. We're looking at that now. Considered together, these findings have begun to elucidate what I've called a social signal transduction pathway that regulates gene expression and ultimately influences health. From this perspective, experiences of social stress get represented in the brain in a network of brain regions that some people have called the physical or social pain network or the threat network. They involve the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the anterior insula. Now, these higher level brain regions don't have the ability to directly regulate peripheral physiology, but they do project to lower level brain regions that do regulate the sympathetic nervous system, the HPA axis, such as the PAG, the autonomic control nuclei, et cetera, et cetera. Those brain regions directly regulate the SNS and the HPA. The end products of those axes, we've already talked about, epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol. Those factors interact with receptors on immune cells. Those signals can then get transduced to transcription factors. Those transcription factors can translocate into the nucleus of the cell, where they can bind to certain transcription binding sites, influence transcription of DNA into RNA and translation of RNA into proteins such as pro-inflammatory cytokines, which then go throughout the body and do their job, which is really great in the short term and really bad in the long term. You want your immune system to go to 6th gear when you have a viral or a bacterial infection. You don't want it to go to 6th gear all the time. Now, let's just take another perspective on what we're talking about here, right? The other perspective is, wait, why the heck would the body be doing this at all? Right? Why do we see, I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, right? Why would the body do anything that would essentially kill the body off, right? Well, we don't know. But here's some speculation from where we stand, where I stand. Historically speaking, up in the left-hand corner there, the innate immune system developed to counter physical threats from predatory animals and dangerous conspecifics. Those are the things that dominated our ancestral environment. An inflammatory response to these physical threats is critical, right? Why? It accelerates wound healing, limits infection, but an even more adaptive response, immune system response, is an anticipatory response in advance of an actual physical insult. One of my favorite examples of this is a study of knee surgery that was recently done at Stanford. They brought some men in for knee surgery as normal, other men for knee surgery, but they stressed them out before they went in for knee surgery. Who had better clinical outcomes? The men who were stressed out before they came in. Why? Because you see this redistribution of immune cells all throughout the body. So once the body is wounded, the immune cells are already there to do their thing. A preparatory or an anticipatory immune system response may have evolved and may have involved monitoring the social environment for potential cues indicating higher risk for physical threats, such as being alone and not being able to protect yourself, which may have enacted what we've called increases in pro-inflammatory gene expression, reductions in antiviral immunity. Why? Well, because if you're socially isolated, you're not likely to get a virus from somebody else. Increases in inflammation, decreases in antiviral immunity. We've called this the conserved transcriptional response to adversity, CTRA. Now, what's the issue here? There are two issues. First, we don't often experience physical threats in the contemporary social environment. I mean, we hear about them all of the time on the news, but it's not often that we personally are directly facing a tiger or out in the wilderness and we're alone, right? So that's one problem. The second problem is that this entire model that I described on the previous slide, all of these stress axes and pathways, can be activated and engaged just as strongly by purely imagined experiences of social stress in the absence of actual physical danger. So we can activate this entire axis leading to inflammatory gene expression in response to social stressors that have not yet occurred and that may never actually occur. We need to measure the genomes of many more people to understand exactly what are the most important and influential aspects of the social environment that have the ability to regulate the human genome. We've focused on some of them, but we've only started with the cast of characters that we know are huge risk factors. But also we need to measure the human environome. We need to have data, much more data, on people's life stress histories so we can understand over the life course what types of experiences are most negative for health and for human gene expression. I just have 2 more slides, so let me just mention that so far we've only talked about the individual. And you've probably been thinking, well, maybe this is just an individualistic issue, but have you ever sat next to somebody who's really anxious? Yeah? What happens? Yeah, you kind of get anxious yourself, right? So what's the implication there? The implication is that if you're anxious, you may not just be regulating the activity of your own genome, you may be regulating the activity of the genome of the person next to you. We are physically disconnected, but we are transcriptionally connected. And if that's not reason enough to care about human gene expression, consider this. About 2% of your entire molecular makeup must be renewed every day to replace dead cells and decaying proteins. And as a result, the experiences that you have today in this room, in the next room, later tonight, whether you're angry or sad or happy, will influence your molecular composition for the next 2 to 3 months. So in closing, be good to your molecular self, to the molecular selves of the people around you, and to each other. Thank you. This is the website. All the papers I've discussed are on here.
As a healthcare provider, you know, once a patient leaves the clinic, life happens, and essential follow-up care is far from certain. Discussing treatment plans, reviewing abnormal lab results, adjusting medications. Most practices ask patients to return to the clinic. The problem is, these follow-ups are inconvenient and often missed. Other practices follow up over the phone, a more convenient option for patients. The problem is, you don't get paid. The remedy? Chiron Health, the only platform designed to get physicians and mid-level providers fully reimbursed for routine follow-up visits over secure video chat. Your patients don't have to take the afternoon off work, and your waiting room doesn't have to fill up for those 10 to 15-minute follow-up conversations. Simply schedule the appointment in your practice management system. We integrate seamlessly. And the patient will be notified by email to verify insurance, complete an informed consent, and pay the copay. When you finish the appointment, complete the clinical documentation in your EHR. What about complicated telemedicine regulation and reimbursement? That's our specialty. Chiron Health's experienced regulatory team handles everything from state medical board and HIPAA compliance to private payer reimbursement. We even check the eligibility of every patient using a proprietary database of telemedicine-specific insurance rules, ensuring your practice is reimbursed. To find out how Chiron Health can transform follow-up care in your practice and get you paid for it, schedule a live demo today. Chiron Health, the future of follow-up care.
Hello, we are back with one of my favorite functional medicine doctors, one of the 2014 Evolution of Medicine Summit speakers, Dr. Shilpa Saxena.
Hi, James.
Doctor, good to see you again.
Thank you so much.
So, we spend a lot of time at the Functional Forum talking about ways to help doctors who are new to functional medicine do it. And I think your group visit model just has so much to offer that. For those who are unfamiliar, what would you say are the core benefits of practicing this group functional medicine model?
Yeah, the core benefits really whittle down to three things. There's clinical, financial, and operational. That's the big problem is that people get inspired by some new way of doing something, whether it be lifestyle, integrative, functional medicine, and then we have to go back to our regular practices and figure out how to make it work. So clinically, group visits, by gathering together, giving them a solution, having them share their successes and struggles, increases the improvement of their outcomes. Financially, it can increase your revenue 200 to 600%. Which most providers are very happy to hear. Yep. And last but not least, because you're leveraging time, you have operational benefits. So staff is happier because you're able to get patients in, there's reduced lobby wait times, there's increased access into your very popular office, which tends to become a bottleneck at times when you become popular doing this type of medicine.
Awesome. We just watched a great lecture on the power of social community and the effect of community on gene expression. Sounds like the science of community is finally arriving.
Yes, what's so interesting is that I was talking to another colleague. The more we get connected with technology, to a certain extent, the more we're getting disconnected with people. I mean, we're connecting with them on some ways, but this is where group visits comes into play because you get that social connection, you get to be around other people going through the same process, and there's something very ancient and healing about that.
That's awesome. So I know that, unlike regular group visits or sort of group education where it's sort of very disease focused, you've really come up with ones that are focused on sort of like the underlying core function. What made you come up with the 4 group visits that you did?
It was just based on the premise you just said. So much of current healthcare, conventional healthcare, focuses on the problem. And functional medicine is all about the solution. What's interesting is there's some core solutions that work for a multitude of diseases. So we started creating topics that really address the common primary care concerns that people come to. So they come to us with their diseases, but they're seeking solutions. So we have something for advanced cardiovascular prevention. Then we have something for blood sugar, blood insulin connection, knowing that there's a metabolic base for a lot of diseases. Third one is related to healing your gut to heal your body. Functional medicine is rooted in that premise that you have to have a healthy gut. And last but certainly not least is the connection between stress and our hormones and how our mind-body connection is very important in the total picture.
Awesome. It's great to be able to have those assets and put groups of people together. And I'd imagine in the gut one, you could have people with gut issues, you could have people with autoimmune disease all in the same crew.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it is that not only are they helping their current disease, but when they fix their gut, for example, they're helping other diseases they may not even know that they're at risk for. So it's a prevention and a treatment program in one.
Absolutely. And one of the things I love about the group visit kits that you put together is all of the codes, the right insurance codes, the forms that they have to sign, all of those things are taken care of. I know you've got a new one you're launching here at IFM. Can you want to tell everyone about what it is and why you've created it?
Absolutely. So the new one is called Healthy Weight for Life. And it's probably obvious why we needed to launch that one. The obesity epidemic is definitely increasing, not only amongst our adults, the peds populations, and functional medicine has a unique way of approaching obesity. It's not just with pure calorie restriction. So we talk about detoxification and then the maintenance program by being anti-inflammatory, low glycemic. So we really pull from that grounding material that IFM has to offer and then create this operational system to be able to create revenue, leverage time for a topic that is a hot topic amongst people. You got to find people where they're at, and weight is one of those topics.
All right, we are here in Austin for the Future of Functional Medicine and Genomics conference, and I have with me Dr. Leslie Stone, who is a specialist in perinatal care. Doc, such a pleasure to have you here on the show. Can you tell us what gets you so passionate about perinatal care and genomics?
Well, it turns out that nutrigenomics, genomics in perinatal care, is not a new concept in any way, shape, or form. Earlier, 50 years ago, we were using genomics to determine things such as phenylketonuria, problems where protein synthesis or protein metabolism is compromised in a neonate, such that if we feed that baby the wrong diet, something heavy in phenylalanine, they develop severe developmental delay. So back 50 years ago, we started intervening nutritionally with such things as a phenylalanine-reduced diet. Okay. Well, that works well for those rare inborn errors of metabolism, but what about for the rest of us who struggle with more chronic diseases, our global explosion, our epidemics of chronic diseases? Is there room for us to take a look at improving our resilience, our resistance to those kind of diseases? And the answer is yes, since our ability to better classify, better identify all of the genes and polymorphisms, we can apply that information to several conditions in the maternal time frame and in the neonatal time frame, specifically small for gestational age and large for gestational age babies, and in the maternal time frame, pregnancy-induced hypertension and gestational diabetes. As it turns out, with with genomic evaluation, nutrigenomic evaluation, and application of nutrition and lifestyles, we can find significant reductions in those outcomes. Those happen to be the key points, the key conditions that result in increased risk as those neonates, as adults, as 55-year-olds, as 65-year-olds. Those are the ones who develop hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, neurocognitive disorders, strokes, asthma, allergies. It's an endless list. And so the potential for managing, for increasing our population's resistance to those kind of diseases exists in a very real way by modification in the perinatal time period.
That's amazing. And so, obviously you've been here all this weekend and going to be lecturing. For those doctors at home or health practitioners who are sort of playing some role in perinatal care, what are some of the best practices that you've seen from understanding this and practicing this over the last 20 years?
Well, I do think that our routine evaluations of the mother, hopefully preconceptually, should absolutely continue. Those include evaluation for infectious diseases, although those play much a less role than before. They do continue to some nutritional disorders, for example, the iron supplement, the iron issues. Okay. However, those are simply not enough. And so I would add that people need to look very hard historically at that person's past history and determine where their vulnerabilities lie based on their family history and their own history. Pick out some of the gene polymorphisms that would make them more vulnerable, and then look for common nutritional deficiencies that are not currently tested for: zinc, carnitine, essential fats, magnesium, probiotics as a nutrient, as an intervention anyway, and then apply those individually to those persons who have those specific vulnerabilities, and voila, you've got improved management, improved outcomes.
Do you think that this part of care is going to be driven by doctors finding out about this, or do you think this is going to be driven from patients sort of demanding this care?
As always, there is a need for buy-in from many areas. The usual drivers are the persons who are most directly affected. And so a mother is one of the most powerfully motivated individuals in the world for achieving meaningful and durable lifestyle changes. Now's the time. We have this wonderful 9-month period, and hopefully even the 12-month period, with which to work to mitigate any risks that her offspring might experience in the future.
And what are some of the testing capabilities that you're seeing arriving that may sort of bring this to everyone?
When we first started looking at genomic individuality, we had very few options at our fingertips. But of course we have improvement in not only the technology and reliability of those tests, such as what's called cell-free DNA analysis that gives us very accurate, very valid analyses of these different genomes. Yeah. But we also have it available at a much reduced price, such that, and most of these companies are now financially accessible to people, even in those populations that are publicly funded. Funded programs are now covered. So we are able to glean that information, and we now know a little bit more. Every day we know a little bit more about what are the important nutrient and lifestyle interventions that make a meaningful difference in the expression of those genes.
That's great. And how far in advance of pregnancy would you recommend that women start to think about these kind of things?
Well, my wish list would begin when that baby is a gamete, which also means that you'd be starting to think about these kids. I think about these kids as a family practitioner. Yeah. When they are in utero with their mother. Yeah. I'm thinking about what their children are going to experience and what that kind of resilience we can expect in that F2 generation. Yeah. Because there's plenty of evidence that what we do with the mother carries through to that F1, the first generation, and then carries through, even if we don't modify F1, carries on through to F2. Wow. It's remarkably powerful.
Transgenerational epigenetics.
Transgenerational epigenetics.
Well, that is certainly something that's either very exciting or very scary, sort of depending on where you sit, right?
You know, it's as somebody has said, it's complex but not complicated. We just take each system, we review it, we figure out its imbalances, we put it together in a very methodical way, and we end up with great outcomes.
Absolutely. Well, we're talking about the future of medicine and the future of functional. You know, if we're going to take this really seriously, we need to think about the future generations that we're working with, and I think that's a great, it's a great insight. And I think that any practitioner who's taking care of kids or mothers at any stage of this could be very well advised to jump on the genomics bandwagon, because that's where it all started. So, thanks again, Dr. Stone.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your work.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right, we are back here at IFM, and I'm here with one of the speakers that I enjoyed the most this weekend, the best clinical information, but definitely also the best banter. Dr. Mike Ash is here. Doc, you talked about ditching the word pathogen. Why should that be removed from our conversational?
I think it doesn't need to be removed in its entirety, but it needs to be placed in context. Express based on that particular article in Nature is that it's limiting our perspective of what a bacteria is and what role it has to play in health. So pathogen automatically conjures up a perception that there's something that's going to cause us harm, and therefore we think of it as being something other than us. Yet the organisms that live within us, they can become pathobiontic, so that's a transfer of inappropriate information based on their circumstance. So we need to think not simply in terms of isolation or reductionism, where we would say this is bad, so it's one bug and we ignore the person, or this is the person who's ill and we ignore the bug. Now we have to recognize that a pathogen's capability or a pathobiont's capability or a commensal's capability to perform its function depends on the health of the host as well as the viability of the organism. So it's just too simplistic a notion based on what we now know in terms of the way that organisms work within us, on us and around us.
And where's that interaction with the human genome?
Well, the biggest interaction in terms of organismal conversion of information takes place in the gastrointestinal tract. We're embedded with a vast array of receptors, specialized pattern recognition motifs which line the gastrointestinal tract and also the cells that live in there. And we spent millennia developing skill sets in that area so that the foods that we consume carry certain types of messages. They get metabolized by the bacteria, and the end product that comes off that binds to these receptors and switches on the genes. So if we want to say where can we most realistically influence gene expression, is in place which has the greatest degree of genetic plasticity, the greatest degree of immune activation, and that is the gastrointestinal tract.
You had an amazing stat in your talk about how many interactions were happening in the gut compared to the rest of the body.
Well, yes, it's a quote from Lloyd Mayer back in 2003, and it, for me, was one of the sort of pivotal things. I was reading one of his papers that, I mean, obviously this is a somewhat guesstimate, but as the years have gone on, it's become clearer and clearer it has merit, which is that we make more immune decisions in a single day in our gastrointestinal tract than our immune system makes in the rest of the body for the rest of your life.
Wow.
And that massive exchange of information that takes place has a great deal of redundancy and plasticity and capability. If it didn't, we'd just be a superating mass of pus on the floor and wouldn't be having this conversation. But our lifestyle means that that level of redundancy is getting less and less. And when we don't have compensatory mechanisms to mop up poor decisions anymore, it keeps constantly expressing these pattern recognition receptors designed primarily to defend us against opportunistic infections. And now they start seeing food particulates and metabolic byproducts that aren't coming, and different types of bacteria that may have a transitory effect or changes in their composition. They get switched on, they activate various genes, some on top of the cells, some inside the cells, and they end up making someone become persistently inflamed.
Well, it's been great here to be at the Institute for Functional Medicine. Dr. Ash has been at almost every one of these meetings over the last...
So my 22nd
meeting, and really appreciate the work of yourself and all of the other leaders of this movement to take us to a point where we can make real change. Thanks so much for your lecture today, and we look forward to bringing you more content from Dr. Ash and some exciting things happening over in the UK very soon.
Thank you.
We've been taking 1-minute tips from practitioners this whole weekend on how they can inspire better care. Is there a tip that you've got from working at the Functional Medicine Center in Cleveland to help practitioners out there deliver even better care?
You know, the tip that I would say is that I've been in a private practice now for 20 years and working with trying to help patients with nutrition myself and referring out. Having a nutritionist in the clinic working with patients one-on-one, directly in relationship as a team, that's the key. It makes the biggest difference. I can't advocate for it enough.
That's it. We're talking practice development strategies, we're talking structure, we're talking clinical practice as well. Doc, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are here at the Austin Functional Medicine Conference, and we're here with 2014 Evolution of Medicine Summit guest, Dr. Terry Walls. Dr. Walls, great to see you again.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You look very well, by the way. Always
Yes.
better and better since I've known
Always
you.
better and better.
So what is
Younger and
your
younger.
1-minute tip you'd love to share with the functional medicine community?
So it's really critical to have 9 cups of vegetables, green color, maybe 1 cup of berries. And what you're doing is you're feeding your microbiome. And if you're not pooping 2 to 3 times a day, add more resistant starch, such as green banana flour, potato starch, plantain flour. So you get those 2 poops a day, you're gonna have a much healthier, happier microbiome, which of course makes for a healthier, happier human.
You heard it here, Dr. Terry Walls. We're at Austin. You should be here next year, and thanks so much for sharing.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure.
I'm Virginia Shapiro. I'm a chiropractor practicing functional medicine in Corvallis, Oregon. And gosh, there's so many things to say, but my 1-minute tip would be to remember the world we live in when you're working with patients. And we can get all caught up in all the detailed tests and procedures and pills and protocols and all of that stuff. And to me, the most important thing is to remember the world we live in, and that patients are part of a herd that's going over a cliff. And that herd is being driven by big agriculture, big chemical, big medicine, big media, etc. And people need to be encouraged to step out of the herd to be well. And you know, just one of the many aspects of that, of where the herd is being driven, is eating food that's produced in really horrific ways. So one of the many things that I have my patients do is go on a Roundup free diet. So just getting Roundup, just get Roundup out of the diet. Know that it's an antibiotic, that it chelates minerals out of the plants, out of the soil, so it robs your patients of minerals, disrupts your the gut microbiome. Patients can eat lots and lots of probiotics, but if they're eating herbicide and that it functions as an antibiotic every single day, it's a waste of time. Dr. Sid Baker, the grandfather of functional medicine, says if you're sitting on a tack, get the tack out of your butt before you start applying therapies. So that's my 1-minute tip.
One of the things that I love to share with my patients is the story about when Andrew Weil, who is an inspiring physician to me, was asked if he could share one thing with his patients. He could only tell them one thing and nothing more in order to help them be the healthiest that they could be. What would it be? And he said, I would teach them how to breathe. And I notice when I listen to my patients who are children and they're doing their breathing, a lot of times they're chest breathing. And I teach my patients how to breathe through the belly.
I'm Dr. Nalini Chilkov. I'm the founder of Integrative Cancer Answers. I specialize in integrative oncology care. I practice in Santa Monica, California. My tip is to keep an eye on fibrinogen levels and D-dimer levels in all of your patients who are over 40. The reason for this is that hypercoagulation is often the very first sign of malignancy, and it's often the primary care provider who will discover this.
All right, so for those of you who have been watching the show for a long time, you probably know my accent. You know that I grew up in the UK, and medicine in the UK is really important to me, although I spend most of my time in the US. So it's a great pleasure to introduce you all to my good friend, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. Doc, good to have you here on the Functional Forum, making your debut.
Having me. Thank you.
So, Doc, what is the future of functional medicine and the way that it's going to interact with, the regular GP out on the street right now?
I think it's a great question, James. I mean, I think the real challenge when you train in a different style of medicine and functional medicine is how do you actually bring that back into your everyday practice? And in the UK where I work, we have our National Health Service, and there are certain challenges with bringing this into the mainstream, but I don't think it's impossible. I mean, there's a general consensus, I think, within the medical profession that we need more time with patients.
Yeah.
And I think there's a movement to see how we can get that. Clearly, it's very difficult with the demand that we've got, but I don't think only time is the answer. If we don't have new tools in our sort of toolbox in terms of how we treat patients and how we see patients, I think we're really going to struggle. So I think fundamentally education, both for the public but also for the medical professions, needed. My belief is that lifestyle and nutrition is the bedrock upon which all treatment should be founded upon. Yeah. But we don't really get taught how to do that. And what I love about IFM here in the States, where I've been getting a lot of my training, is it gives you the science and the specific tools with how to put these sort of things into practice with your patients.
Absolutely. How inspiring was it to listen to Dr. Bland yesterday talk about really how medicine is going to sort of go beyond hospitals and doctors and into this technological world? Do you think England's ready for that?
I think England, Scotland, the whole UK is ready for this, absolutely, because people may not know what the solution is, but there's a general awareness that what we are currently doing is just not working.
Yeah.
Patients are dissatisfied, doctors are dissatisfied. The primary care in the UK is currently in crisis. People want to leave. Nobody enjoys their jobs anymore. And if you were to try and design a healthcare system, I would argue that the first two things you have to take care of is, number one, the person giving the healthcare advice, i.e. in this case, the doctor, let's say. He would need to feel happy, empowered that he has the time and energy to put into consultations.
Yeah.
But at the moment, doctors don't have the time and energy, so it is actually quicker and easier and better for your sort of workload in the day. It's better to prescribe a pill.
Yeah.
It's quick, it's easy. Patient goes out, next patient comes in. The second thing is patient, I think, if you were designing this healthcare system from scratch, they need to feel that they've got time, energy, space to actually open up neither of which we have at the moment. And so I think fundamentally these two things need changing in a huge way. People may not know the solution yet, sort of in the UK, in sort of the mainstream media view. I think people like us who come out here and train, we realize there is another way, and actually it's not as tricky as people think.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people in America think an NHS-style system would be a solution to the American problems, but I think you probably know that that's not just going to be the solution, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think there's multiple challenges with the NHS. I mean, I think for acute care, I think the NHS is fantastic. You know, I think certainly what we read in the press about what people in the US are concerned about is, you know, that person with, you know, gets knocked over in the street, and, you know, have they got insurance to pay for their healthcare? I mean, in the UK, you know, that's not a problem. You know, anybody gets free treatments, and acute care works very well like that. But the things we're seeing today, I mean, this is chronic disease. There's no one magic bullet for these things, and how you implement that into a publicly funded system, I think, is tricky. And we need ways to leverage our time better. If, you know, the old model of care where we see one patient for 7 to 10 minutes, you know, a lot of the time I'm finding in the morning I'm giving the same nutritional recommendations to 5, 10 patients. So what I've started doing is at the end of my NHS surgery, I get all the diabetics in, and I give them a 1-hour lecture on what the foods they eat, how it impacts their blood sugar, how it impacts their insulin. And that does two things. You're empowering them, you're making them feel there's something they can do. But then more importantly, after that, they've got their own community. You know, they can then connect with each other, because general practice is based around local communities. And in terms of implementing the change, because look, you know, I think we all know as doctors that what we say within the room, that's important, but ultimately, people are going to make changes in that sort of time when they're not with you. That's when they're making those changes. And how do you give them that support? I think, you know, having these little groups of community, that helps, you know.
Absolutely. How inspired have you been by Dr. Saxon? We just had her on the show earlier, just talking about the group visit model. It seems like there's some structure that's already being created, tested, and works to be able to do what you're talking about.
Yeah, very much so. I think I first heard Dr. Saxon speak maybe 2 years ago, and I actually heard one of her talks on group care, and it was like an awakening for me. You know, I thought, wow, it's almost revolutionary, but it's quite simplistic if you think about it. You know, why waste time giving the same advice to many different people, many different patients, when you can do it in one go? And you know, I don't know where it came from, but I think that's had a big influence on me actually starting to implement this. And the great thing, you spoke about the NHS. You can do this in the NHS. You know, I think getting an hour and a half with a patient to really get to the bottom of their problem, I think is going to be hard in a publicly funded healthcare system. But you know, I think there are small things we can do that are going to improve care.
Anything else you'd like to, you know, to share with the functional medicine community worldwide?
Look, I think the movement's great. I think the more people who can get out there and educate people around them and spread the word, the better, because there's a lot of sick people out there, but what they don't realize, and what a lot of the medical profession still don't realize, is that these are fundamentally lifestyle-related conditions. And if the people giving that care have not been given advanced training in lifestyle medicine, we're not going to tackle this. You know, people coming with arthritis, they presume that this is a wear and tear problem. Well, I tell you, the amount of people with arthritis, when they change their diet, suddenly their pain goes. I mean, we don't get taught that in medical school. It's with experience that actually every time you eat something, I think it's either doing you good or doing you bad. And if you make bad choices, that's fine, as long as you have been educated in terms of what those choices are. But I think there's a real disconnect between people's symptoms and their lifestyle. People don't relate. You know, I've got pain in my knee. People don't think, actually, it could be something to do with the way I'm eating. And you know, there's a disassociation. I think as doctors, we need to be educated, and then we need to help educate patients.
Absolutely. Well, I couldn't have said it better. You know, I'm really excited. You know, personally, my mother's in part of the NHS, and you know, I have friends and family. I have friends who are doctors, and I'm really excited to see, you know, the impact that you're going to have on, you know, on medicine in the UK. It certainly needs it, and you know, I think the ripple effects of some of what you're doing is really powerful. And I wish you all the best on this journey.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, you'll be hearing a lot more from him in this year's Evolution of Medicine Summit and in all kinds of exciting things coming up. Watch this space and we'll be keeping you up to date.
And my tip is for you who have clients or patients with social anxiety. There's a genetic condition called pyroluria that responds really well to a few key nutrients. And once you get your patients on these nutrients, their social anxiety goes away. And interestingly enough, a lot of people who are introverts and have a lot of anxiety in social settings find that when they get on key nutrients, they no longer feel that they're introverted. So my question is, introversion a personality trait or is it a biochemical deficiency? But let me just tell you what these nutrients are. The key one is vitamin B6, and it may be pyridoxine or it may be P5P that is effective. I will start my clients on 100 milligrams of vitamin B6. And then the other nutrient is zinc, and zinc has been shown to be very effective in many mood disorders and is very effective for someone who has pyroluria and other anxiety conditions. And then the other nutrient is evening primrose oil, which is a form of omega-6, and this actually enhances zinc absorption. And a lot of people with this pyroluria condition do not need omega-3s, but they are typically lower in the omega-6, and this is where the evening primrose oil is very helpful. And try these nutrients with your clients who have pyroluria or social anxiety, and you'll be very surprised to see that it's a lot more common than we realize, and the results are amazing. People get results within a week or so.
Hey, I'm Tom Maltier, certified nutritionist, certified functional medicine practitioner. And you know, one of the things that I'm looking at these days is how complicated medicine is. So we're all looking at all the minutiae, all the details. We want to know about the genes. We want to know about all these little things. And go back to what my mentors have taught me. Sidney Baker from Yale, for example, has said, look, all disease is caused by an imbalance. We're getting too much of things we don't need and not enough of what we do need. And if you back out and you look at some of the simple things that create life and health, so clean air, clean water, clean food, we see that health is difficult. So what I'm doing most of the time is I'm getting right to the root of diet. I'm looking at things like food sensitivities and the elimination diet. I'm looking at having people eat more broccoli, taking baths, relaxing, loving one another. And I'll tell you what, the clinical results are fantastic. So while it's really fun to go into the minutiae and the details, it's really healing to get back into what really creates life itself. That's my 1 minute.
My name's Dr. Keisha Ewers. I am a PhD sexologist as well as a nurse practitioner and functional medicine practitioner and an Ayurvedic practitioner. So I've taken all of that stuff together and I'm focusing on really addressing women's sexuality, so functional sexology. And what we have to do is bring the conversation to libido level or libido fatigue as the measurement of mitochondrial health, as not just hormone levels. So we want to say this is the level of vitality. There are 5 root causes for low libido. Start looking at emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, and their libido story. What's the history, the context, the timeline? Using the matrix to really look at libido, because it's like the idiot light on the dashboard. It's the indicator of all health and vitality.
Hi, I'm Scott Shannon. I'm a child psychiatrist from Fort Collins, Colorado, and I've been working with kids in a holistic, integrated, functional way for probably 20 years. And my tip is when you're dealing with ADHD, go beyond the biochemistry and look at the brain. I really recommend getting a quantitative EEG and trying to understand the patterns of inattention from looking at the QEEG. It's part of the philosophy of going underneath and looking under the hood. So that's my 1 minute tip.
Hi, my name is Mette. I am the co-founder and CEO of MyMe. And my tip is that unless you have strong indications of the opposite, always assume that any behavior, no matter how detrimental it is in the long run, always has a rationale governing it. As an example, young patient unwilling to drink water despite high levels of prednisone and plaquenil intake, stating that it had to do with it being not delicious, when in reality it came down to 4 years ago her doctor had told her that she had water retention and she had and simply not had water since.
So one of the things that we've done at IFM is incorporated a lot in the way of colors. So when we put together the different food plans, we emphasize the whole rainbow, the whole spectrum as it relates to the different foods that we want patients to eat. We see a lot of these different phytonutrient-dense foods throughout all of the different food plans. Cardiometabolic plan, elimination diet, energy food plan, it's all there. So even if we can get our patients eating just a little bit more color, that makes a huge impact. So focus on the color, on the rainbow.
Tom, if you could deliver a tip for the functional medicine community in 1 minute, what would it be?
Every degenerative disease, as far as I know, every degenerative disease at the cellular level is a disease of inflammation. Every disease at the cellular level. So the first thing I want to educate my patients on is stop throwing gasoline on the fire. That just makes sense. So with that in mind, the next concept is every forkful of what you put in your mouth is either inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. Every forkful. There's no neutrals except healthy water. As far as I know, there's no neutrals except healthy water. So we want more anti-inflammatories going in with very few inflammatories when a patient's already presenting to you with a systemic inflammatory cascade manifesting as whatever their symptoms are.
One last question, what do you have a message for those chiropractors that are just delivering, regular chiropractic and not getting into any of the nutrition or lifestyle types of things? What are they missing out that they could be?
They're not missing anything.
Okay.
If that's your passion,
yeah.
If that's your passion, great. You be the best at your musculoskeletal care, and you find the guy who is the best at talking about diet and nutrition. Don't have blinders. Obviously, what you put in your mouth has everything to do with how your body functions. That's obvious. And if that's not a passion of yours to get into and really become an expert, create an alliance with someone in the community, whether it's a colleague down the street or it's a nutritionist or a registered dietitian. You create an alliance. But you do need to know that what we put in our mouths fuel the inflammatory cascade that manifests as musculoskeletal care.
Hello, if you're a fan of the Functional Forum, you know that it's equally important for us for doctors to do great medicine, but also to build strong, sustainable practice models. And so we are in Texas the week before IFM. I'm here in San Antonio for Freedom Practice Coaching's Quarterly and catching up with some of the doctors who we recommended to FPC to see how they're getting on. I think what you're going to see is that this is an amazing model, and integrative and functional doctors are using this to be able to build strong, sustainable practices. So let's speak to some of those doctors and see how they're getting on. Can you share a little bit about the impact of Freedom Practice Coaching's had on your practice?
Well, we've been doing this for about 8 years now.
Oh, wow.
And, since we are not insurance-based, we're cash-based, we've been modeling along, just barely making ends meet. And I've been with Freedom Practice Coaching for about 9 weeks now.
9 weeks.
And in the 9 weeks, we have increased our income almost 80% in that time frame.
That's great. Mm-hmm. And what about the program has really added to it?
The incredible thing about it is the coaching, and what we have been able to do is allow our staff to act like CEOs. So now our staff, because they're getting bonuses, they are now they've stepped forward and they are acting like if it's their business.
Yeah.
I mean, they care about everything that happens. They are very attentive. They are talking to their patients because they realize that their bonuses depends on how they perform.
I'm here with Dr. Corinne Weaver, who has been with FPC since February. What's been your experience?
Well, I've been in practice for 11 years as a chiropractor and wanted to implement more functional medicine. And so I figured I had a friend that was in it and he was doing really well in the past year, so I thought this would be a good to do in my practice. And so we implemented it in February, and in March was able to increase our office almost double.
Double in the first month?
In the first month,
and
yeah.
How's that going since then?
It keeps going. And there's just so much to learn with Freedom Practice Coaching. It's just an awesome experience since February.
What do you think is the major takeaway or major difference from the way your colleagues are doing it?
Well, the thing is, I've been in practice management groups, probably 3 other ones in the past. It's just it's the implementing. The implementing and the coaching is real important, the weekly coaching calls. and they're on me like all the time, you know, and so that's been a big motivator. I could do it probably by myself, but I need the coaching, so I needed that. And so once they started doing the coaching implement, they pushed me, and then I started to just take off.
One of the things that was a struggle initially for me was that I forgot that who I was still can be utilized in the program of the systems that I was learning from FPC. So I was so strict on, even though I was following the scripts and how to do it, that when I allowed myself and what I've been doing all these years to embrace the systems that FPC was showing me, and the guidance and support, especially from Lewis, who's my coach, and Charlie and Matt, then boom, then things started to take off.
It's interesting coming, this is my first IFM, and one of the things I'm learning being an instructor for Apex and traveling around the country is that a powerful thing is for doctors to continue to come to all of these seminars and to many seminars from different companies, because we have this insatiable thirst for knowledge, and we're only going to learn more, which is only going to benefit our patients more and more. So I think it's something that it behooves us to continue to open the can of worms and keep going after that passion that drove you to these seminars, to learn more, to help patients. And the other thing I'd also like to say is I think we should always become profitable. I think that there's an esteem issue with practitioners, and we have a service that is saving and changing lives, and I think we should be able to benefit from that, because it's very difficult to help people when your doors are closed. So those are my 2 bits.
I'm Corey Feldman, and my tip is to follow your passion, learn how to be profitable doing what you love, and connect with more people like you so that you can really spread this movement, because it's amazing.
I'm here with 2014 Evolution of Medicine Summit speaker, Dr. Alejandra Carrasco of Nourish Medicine. And Doc, on that summit you talked about the power of family to create change. Yes. But this year we've been on a whole tip about the micropractice evolution, and you have a very interesting and particular micropractice model. Would you share with people what that micropractice looks like?
Yes, so my micropractice is about this big. Literally, I have a maybe 10 by 8 room, and I have a virtual assistant that is my one employee, and I take care of about 10 patients a week through that practice. It's a digital practice. It's very, I would say, homegrown, feels very cozy and organic, and I can do everything I need to do out of that little tiny space.
And where did you choose to locate it?
I located in Central Austin, so best city in the world.
Exactly. Well, there's a home advantage. Now, when I came to see it, it was cool because there's a lot of healthy people walking around. What are they doing there?
So I actually have my practice within a larger community center called Casa de Luz. And Casa de Luz is basically like an integrative community where there's a school and there's a macrobiotic restaurant, and then there's other practitioners as well. So it's definitely a healthy kind of environment and atmosphere, and everyone that's there is thinking about, how to optimize their health and how to live just a very vibrant life.
And what do you see the benefit for other practitioners that are watching? Because you made the jump from regular family practice into functional medicine to find a place to practice that's actually in alignment with the type of medicine that you want to work with. What sort of difference does that make to making the micropractice successful?
I don't know if necessarily patients to my door, but it definitely changes my energy, and I feel very aligned with, in the space where I work, I feel very aligned because everyone has that mission of, just being the best person and the best, healthiest person they can be. So I would say that has definitely been transformative for me and for my patients that have never been to that location before, and they walk through those doors, they say, wow, this is amazing compared to, a typical medical building that's very, sterile and kind of drab, and this is like full of plants and life, and people can take a deep breath and they say, I feel like my blood pressure came down just walking to your door.
Yeah,
so,
it's a remarkable medical experience, and that's what we need in medicine, is a lot more remarkable experiences. So if you want to find out more about Dr. Carrasco, Glasgow. It's nourishmedicine.com. She has the digitally integrated micropractice, and is a great example for other clinicians who want to make the leap, and a mother, and a chef, and a lot of other things. So
you can do it all.
You can do it all. Thanks so much, Alex.
Thank you.
Mwah. Hey, thanks so much for watching this functional forum in collaboration with the Institute for Functional Medicine. We had a great time at the conference at the end of May, their annual conference in Austin. I hope you've enjoyed the content. We will be back next month on the first Monday of the month with our consistent live show that we have every other month of the year. Hope you can tune into that. Our vision at the Evolution of Medicine is to empower 100,000 integrative micropractices focused on root cause resolution of symptoms and community health. If you think you might be one of those practitioners, make sure to go to goevomed.com and you can book a time with one of our Evolution of Medicine concierges. We can find out a little bit about your practice, where it is now, and your vision, and recommend the right resources. But until that time, I've been James Maskell, your host, and we'll see you next time.